and challenging the topic of genetically modified organisms. I'm going to be challenging the misconceptions surrounding them and kind of give you an outline of the actual positives that genetically modified organisms apply to the world. So, what is a genetically modified organism, or GMO? The Non-GMO Project defines it as a plant, animal, microorganism, or other organism whose genetic makeup has been modified using recombined DNA methods. These genetic modifications can be beneficial for the production of food, fight and deadly disease, and the protection from harmful environmental conditions. In many ways, GMOs have, in recent time, kind of been seen as the Frankenstein. Some people hate them, some people like them. There's kind of no middle ground. I think this is because of companies like Cargill and Monsanto's who really go out there and almost take control of certain types of seeds and don't really give control to anyone else. In this speech, I'll be outlining the benefits surrounding the development and use of responsible GMO use and challenging the bias against their use in production agriculture. My first point, feeding an increasing population. In the 21st century, there are many benefits to GMOs. One of them is feeding an increasing population. An estimate by World Counter estimates the world population to be just above 7.5 billion people. From this graph, you can see by 2020, we're going to be almost to 8 billion people. As the world population continues to grow past 7 billion people, so does the production of food. A study by Harvard stressed the need for advanced agriculture technologies such as GMOs in order to feed the increasing population. With this increasing growth of the population, so does the pressure that farmers feel when they're trying to produce the food that we all eat. However, in areas where there's already a food shortage, that food shortage is just going to get worse. People are going to starve, there's going to be famine, and that's just going to get worse as the population grows. Using GMOs is a solution to this. Because GMOs allow us to increase the yield of crops like soybeans, corn, cotton, wheat. All of those things are a good thing because by increasing yields, we're going to be able to feed more people. And it's nothing that we haven't done before. In the 18th, 19th, and 20th century, we hybridized crops so that they would increase their yields. So increasing yields is nothing new. We're just doing it in a different way. My second point is genetically modified crops also allow us to adjust to changing climates and conditions. A study by a company that is doing a lot of this research is Monsanto's, one of the largest GM seed companies in the world and a leader in its innovation. Their site's a great site. If you ever go and look at it, they have great information on the changes that they're making in order to combat climate change. So this is a really detailed map of, with the projected climate change, this is going to be, based on these colors, the change in yield. So the red is going to be a negative yield, and the green is going to be a positive yield. As you can see, most of the southern hemisphere is going to start to become this negative yielding. So those areas are going to start to produce less. And as you can see, some of these are the third world and areas where there's massive population, such as India. Another good example of the good that GMOs do in fighting changing conditions also happens here at home. In California, we have very salinated soil. This means there's high sodium and salt content in the soil. So areas like Tulare County, Kern County, King County, most of those areas have a lot of salt. So to combat this, they're using GM crops. So a study by UC Santa Cruz in the San Joaquin Valley found that inserting a gray mangrove gene allows plants to thrive in highly salinated areas. with the insertion of this gene from another plant, it allows plants that once wouldn't survive or wouldn't thrive in highly salinated areas to thrive in soils that have high salt levels. My third point is the reduction of pesticides and herbicides. You may not think about it, but GM crops allow us to reduce the amount of pesticides and herbicides we use because we are able to genetically modify these plants to combat pests and weeds. A study done by Carleton College found that the application of genetically modified crops allowed for a 6% decrease in the amount of herbicides used in order to control weeds. And not only have these studies been done by Carleton College, they've also been done by the USDA, by the EPA, and by Monsanto's themselves. And it may not seem like a big deal. 6% is probably nothing. But when you think about that millions upon millions of gallons of these herbicides and pesticides are sprayed on most of the crops that you eat these days, that reduction would mean hundreds of thousands of gallons that we're not using. Not only will this help us because we will be consuming less glyphosate, which is Roundup, but we'll also be benefiting the environment by not adding so many of these chemicals to the world. My fourth point is there's an increase in nutritional value. You can genetically modify crops to increase their nutritional value. A report by the American Society of Plant Biologists found that with a genetic modification of the nutritional value of the crops being produced, this could alter the calorie count, vitamin and mineral concentrations, and other dietary nutritional values. So this is going to help those populations that are already malnourished. If you're getting crops that are higher in protein, higher in fats, higher in calorie counts, higher in vitamins and minerals, obviously you're getting more with just the little that you already have. This is going to be a huge positive for areas like India and the third world and developing countries, and will allow us to kind of get a step forward in the fight against malnutrition and hunger. My fifth point is, again, I want to stress that this is nothing new. We've been breeding plants, hybridizing plants for thousands of years. A good quote here by Sir Richard John Roberts of Northeastern University explains that genetic modification is nothing new to humans. Humans have been farming for thousands of years, and it's always been advantageous for farmers to cultivate the best, healthiest crops they can. So I want you to think about that. GMOs, for a while, have been seen as these bad things. Instead of seeing them as a bad thing, we need to see them as a good thing. Yes, maybe there are some out there that have things like Bt toxin, which builds up in our bodies and can kill us. But if we embrace them, we're going to allow for the ever-changing population, the ever-changing climate. We're going to be able to fight the limited land availability we have. We'll be able to reduce the glyphosate and other chemicals we're using. And we'll be able to feed 8 billion people by 2020 in an ever-changing climate with less land than ever. So what am I advocating for? I'm advocating for regulated use. I think these should be controlled. They should be controlled they should be controlled through regulated companies and overwatch committees in the use and the ethical use and health concerns that are related to GMOs, and for the responsible use. We need to keep the environment in mind and keep nature natural. So GMOs aren't a bad thing. Instead of pushing GMOs away, we need to embrace them and use them in responsible and safe ways.